The first thing my Aunt Carol said to me at my grandfather's funeral was, "Oh, you came." Not hello, not I'm sorry for your loss. Just those 3 words, dropped like a piece of trash she didn't want to carry anymore. She turned back to my cousin Michael before I could answer, already whispering about the seating chart at the front of the church, like where people sat mattered more than the man lying in the casket 20 feet away. I stood near the back doors in my only black suit, the one I'd bought for my job interview 2 years ago, and I watched my family move around that funeral home like actors who already knew their lines. Nobody looked at me. Nobody hugged me. My own mother glanced my way once, her eyes sliding past me the way you'd look past a stranger asking for spare change. Grandpa Walter was the only person in that building who had ever made me feel like I mattered. And now he was gone, and I was standing alone in a room full of people who shared my blood and couldn't be bothered to share a single kind word. I want to tell you what happened that day, because it's the kind of story that makes you question everything you think you know about family, about money, about who really loves you when there's nothing left to gain from it. My name is Ethan. I was 26 years old that spring, working 2 jobs just to afford a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. My parents, Richard and Diane, had a much nicer house across the city, the kind with a 3-car garage and a pool they never used. My older brother Connor drove a car that cost more than I made in a year. My sister Jenna had just gotten engaged to a man whose family owned half the office buildings downtown. I was the poor one, the one who chose community college over an Ivy League school because I couldn't afford the tuition and didn't want the debt. The one who worked weekends instead of going to family parties. The one who, according to my mother, never really tried hard enough. But there was one person in my family who never made me feel small. My grandfather. Grandpa Walter built his fortune from nothing. He grew up poor in a small Ohio town, worked in a factory until he saved enough to start his own hardware supply business, and grew that business into something worth millions. By the time I was born, he was already a wealthy man, but he never acted like it. He drove the same truck for 20 years. He wore the same brown leather jacket until the elbows wore thin. He didn't care about appearances. He cared about people. Every Sunday afternoon, while the rest of my family made excuses about being busy, I drove 40 minutes to his house and sat with him on the back porch. We didn't do anything fancy. We drank coffee. We talked about baseball. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, and that was fine too. He always kept a small leather notebook in his shirt pocket, the pages worn soft from years of use, and every now and then he'd pull it out and write something down. I never asked what he wrote. It felt like his own private world, and I respected that. When he got sick 2 years before he died, everything changed. Congestive heart failure, the doctors said. It meant hospital visits, medication schedules, days when he could barely get out of bed. My parents visited twice that entire year. My brother visited once for 20 minutes, mostly to ask if Grandpa needed help getting his affairs in order. My sister sent a fruit basket. I was there almost every week. I drove him to appointments. I sat with him during chemotherapy sessions when the cancer showed up on top of the heart problems. I learned how to manage his medications, how to cook the bland food his doctor recommended, how to help him into his wheelchair without hurting his back. I never once thought about what he might leave me. I just didn't want him to be alone. "You're the only one who shows up," he told me one evening, his voice thin and tired, his hand shaking as he reached for his coffee cup. "Your parents call, they send cards, but you're the one who's actually here." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just squeezed his hand and told him I'd see him next Sunday. He passed away on a cold morning in March, quietly in his sleep, in the same house he'd lived in for 40 years. I found out from a phone call from his housekeeper, not from my own mother. That should have told me something about what was coming. The funeral was held 5 days later at a large church downtown, the kind with stained glass windows and a choir loft, the kind of place my grandfather would have thought was too fancy for a simple man like him. But my parents insisted on it. They said Grandpa deserved a proper send-off, though I suspected they cared more about how it would look to their friends and business associates than what Grandpa actually would have wanted. I arrived early, wanting a few quiet minutes before the crowd showed up. Instead, I found my family already there, clustered near the front pews, dressed in expensive black clothing, talking in low, excited voices that didn't match the reason we were all gathered. The lawyer said the reading happens right after the service, I heard my Uncle Frank say to my father. Should be straightforward. Walter always said the house and the majority of the estate would go to family. Which is exactly why we shouldn't have to share it with everyone, my mother replied, glancing toward the back of the church where a few of Grandpa's old friends and former employees were starting to arrive. Some people think they're entitled to things they had nothing to do with. I froze near the doorway, coffee I didn't remember buying still warm in my hand. I understood immediately what she meant. She wasn't talking about strangers. She was talking about me. My cousin Michael laughed at something Jenna said, and I heard the word inheritance float across the room like it was the punchline of a joke. Nobody was crying. Nobody looked sad. They looked like people waiting for a lottery drawing, checking their phones, comparing notes about how they planned to spend money that technically belonged to a man who hadn't even been buried yet. I found a seat near the back, alone, and I stayed there through the entire service. The priest spoke about Grandpa's generosity, his hard work, his devotion to his community. My father gave a eulogy about family values that made my stomach turn, considering he hadn't visited his own dying father more than twice in the last year of his life. Connor didn't speak at all. Jenna cried theatrical tears that dried up the moment the service ended. After the burial, everyone gathered back at my parents' house for what they called a reception, though it felt more like a business meeting than a memorial. The lawyer, a tall man named Mr. Bradford who had handled Grandpa's affairs for over 20 years, arrived carrying a leather briefcase and a folder thick with documents. That's when things started to get uncomfortable, in a way I hadn't expected. "Ethan," my mother said, cornering me near the kitchen, her voice sharp and low so the others couldn't hear. "I think it would be best if you didn't stay for the reading of the will." I blinked at her, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "It's a family matter," she continued, not quite meeting my eyes. "And frankly, sweetheart, we all know your grandfather's estate isn't really going to concern you. There's no reason to make things awkward." I felt my face go hot, the kind of heat that comes right before your eyes start to sting. He was my grandfather, too. "Of course he was," she said, in the tone people use when they're humoring a child. "But let's be realistic. You two were close, sure, but Walter was a practical man. He wasn't going to leave anything significant to someone who—" She paused, choosing her words like she was picking through a bin of rotten fruit, "who hasn't exactly made much of himself." Connor overheard the last part and smirked from across the room. "Yeah, man, maybe just wait outside. This is gonna take a while, and it's not really your scene." I wanted to walk out right then. I wanted to get in my car and drive away and never look back at any of them. But something kept me rooted to that spot. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was some quiet part of me that already sensed there was more to this story than my family understood. Maybe I just wanted to see their faces when they found out I wasn't going anywhere. "I'm staying," I said, and I walked past my mother into the living room where the rest of the family had already gathered. The room went quiet when I sat down. Jenna exchanged a look with Aunt Carol. My father cleared his throat like he was about to object, but Mr. Bradford was already opening his briefcase, and nobody wanted to cause a scene in front of the lawyer. "Before we begin," Mr. Bradford said, settling into the armchair Grandpa used to sit in every Christmas, "I want to explain that Walter made some changes to his estate plan roughly 8 months ago. He came to my office alone, without any family present, and asked that these changes remain confidential until this exact moment." A ripple of unease passed through the room. My father shifted in his seat. My mother's smile faltered just slightly. 8 months ago, Mr. Bradford continued, your father specifically instructed me to include a personal letter as part of the reading. He wrote it by hand. He asked that I read it exactly as written, without omission, regardless of how any of you might react. He pulled a folded piece of paper from a plain envelope. The paper slightly yellowed, the handwriting on it unmistakably shaky in the way it gets when a person's body is failing, but their mind is still sharp. I'll read it now, Mr. Bradford said. The room fell into a silence so complete I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. The same clock Grandpa used to wind every Sunday morning while I watched from the kitchen table. To my family, Mr. Bradford read, his voice steady and clear. If you are hearing this, then I am gone, and there are things I need to say that I never had the courage to say while I was still breathing. He paused, glancing briefly around the room before continuing. For most of my life, I built things, a business, a home, a name that people respected in this town. I always believed that if I worked hard enough and gave my family enough, they would understand what truly matters. I was wrong, and I understood that too late. My mother's hand tightened around her wine glass. Nobody moved. Richard, Diane, Connor, Jenna, Carol, Frank, Michael. Mr. Bradford read the names slowly, deliberately. I love each of you. You are my children, my grandchildren, my family by blood. But love isn't measured in blood. It's measured in time, in presence, in the choice to show up when showing up costs you something. I felt my chest tighten. I looked down at my hands, not wanting to see the faces of the people around me. In the last 2 years of my life, I was sick more often than I was well. I needed help. I needed company. I needed someone to simply sit with me on the bad days, when the medication made me nauseous and the fear of dying kept me awake at night. Only one person did that. Only one person drove 40 minutes every single Sunday, rain or shine, sick or healthy, to sit with an old man who had nothing left to offer him except stories and coffee. Mr. Bradford looked up from the letter, and for just a moment, his eyes met mine. That person is my grandson, Ethan. The room erupted into a kind of stunned silence that was somehow louder than actual noise. My mother's mouth opened slightly. Connor's smirk vanished completely. Jenna set down her glass so hard the wine sloshed over the rim. Mr. Bradford continued reading. Ethan never asked me for a single dollar. He never mentioned my money, my business, or my will. He came because he wanted to be there, not because he wanted something from me. He learned my medication schedule. He held my hand during chemotherapy. He listened to the same stories about my childhood a dozen times without ever telling me I'd already told him. He gave me something none of the rest of you gave me in those final years. His time, freely, without expectation. I felt tears building behind my eyes, and I didn't try to stop them. I know some of you will be angry when you hear what I've decided. I know some of you will say it isn't fair, that Ethan didn't earn this the way you believe you did, simply by being born into this family. But I ask you to consider something. What did any of you actually do to earn my trust in these final years? What did any of you sacrifice? What did any of you give up to be present with me when I needed you most? My father's face had gone pale. My mother was staring at the floor. For that reason, Mr. Bradford read, his voice slowing to give weight to each word, I am leaving the majority of my estate to my grandson, Ethan. This includes the family home on Maple Ridge Road, my remaining business holdings, and the bulk of my financial savings, totaling approximately $4.2 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. Nobody breathed. To my children and remaining grandchildren, I leave $100,000 each, along with my sincere hope that you will use this gift to reflect on what truly matters in a family, rather than what a bank account contains. Mr. Bradford folded the letter and set it down gently on the coffee table. There's one more line, he said quietly. Walter wanted it read separately after a pause. He picked the paper back up. "Ethan, if you're listening to this, know that I saw you. Every Sunday, every visit, every small kindness you never thought I noticed. I saw all of it. This isn't charity. This isn't pity. This is simply the truth finally being told. Thank you for loving an old man who had nothing left to give you but love in return." The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour, though it was probably only 10 seconds. Then my mother's voice cut through it, sharp and trembling. "This is absurd," she said, standing up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "He was manipulated. He was sick. He was on medication. He wasn't thinking clearly. Walter was of completely sound mind when he made these changes," Mr. Bradford interrupted calmly. "According to 2 independent medical evaluations conducted at the time, both of which are included in the estate file. I anticipated this reaction, and I prepared accordingly." "This is insane," Connor snapped, jumping to his feet. "He gets everything. Just because he showed up a few times, we're his actual children, his actual grandchildren." "He showed up every week for 2 years," I said quietly, the first words I'd spoken since the letter began. My voice shook, but I kept going. "Where were you?" Connor's jaw tightened. He didn't have an answer. "You don't get to sit there and act wounded," I continued, feeling something inside me finally breaking free after years of staying quiet, of swallowing insults, of pretending it didn't hurt to be treated like an outsider in my own family. "You didn't even visit him when he was dying. Aunt Carol sent a fruit basket. Jenna sent flowers with a card she probably had her assistant sign. None of you showed up, and now you want to stand here and act like I stole something from you." "You always thought you were better than us," Jenna spat, her carefully applied makeup doing nothing to hide the ugliness in her expression. "Playing the poor grandson, showing up with your sad little coffee visits, making the rest of us look bad." "I wasn't trying to make anyone look bad," I said, and I meant it. "I was trying to be there for a man who was dying alone. That's all this ever was." My father finally spoke, his voice low and controlled in a way that felt more dangerous than Connor's shouting. "We will be contesting this will. You understand that, don't you? No court in this state is going to uphold a will that disinherits an entire family in favor of one grandchild." Mr. Bradford, unbothered, reached into his briefcase and pulled out another folder. "You're welcome to try," he said evenly. "Though I should mention that Walter anticipated this possibility as well. The will includes a no-contest clause. Any beneficiary who challenges the will in court automatically forfeits their inheritance entirely, including the $100,000 each of you was left. I'd advise consulting your own attorneys before proceeding, but Walter was quite thorough." The room went quiet again, this time with a different kind of tension, the sound of greed calculating risk against reward. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated in the way I might have expected. Mostly, I felt exhausted and sad and strangely hollow, like the truth had finally arrived, but it had come at the cost of watching my family reveal exactly who they really were. "I don't want to fight about this," I said, looking around the room at faces that had once felt like family and now felt like strangers wearing familiar masks. "Grandpa didn't leave me this because he wanted a war. He left it to me because he trusted me. I'm not going to turn it into something ugly just because the rest of you are angry." "How generous of you," my mother said bitterly, though the words came out weaker than she probably intended. I didn't respond to that. There wasn't anything left to say that would change how she felt about me, and I was tired of trying. I left my parents' house that evening and drove out to Grandpa's home on Maple Ridge Road, the house that now technically belonged to me, though it didn't feel real yet. I sat on the back porch where we used to drink coffee together, in the same chair he always used, and I let myself cry for the first time since the funeral began. Not because of the money, not because of the fight with my family. I cried because I missed him, plainly and simply, The way you miss someone whose absence leaves a hole shaped exactly like them. I found his leather notebook a few days later, tucked into the drawer of his nightstand, and I finally allowed myself to read it. Most of the pages were filled with small, ordinary observations, weather notes, grocery lists, memories of my grandmother who had passed years before I was born. But near the back, dated just a few months before he died, I found an entry that stopped me cold. "Ethan came by again today," it read. "Sat with me for 3 hours even though I mostly slept through it. He doesn't know I noticed him reading to me while I dozed off. That boy has more heart than this entire family combined, and he doesn't even realize it. I need to make sure he knows how much he means to me, one way or another, before it's too late." I closed the notebook and held it against my chest for a long time. In the weeks that followed, my family mostly stopped speaking to me. My mother sent one final text message calling me ungrateful and selfish, which felt almost funny considering everything that had happened. Connor blocked my number. Jenna posted vague messages online about fake family members that everyone who knew us understood were aimed at me. My father simply disappeared from my life entirely, the way he'd always been more absent than present anyway. I didn't fight any of them on it. I didn't try to defend myself or explain or ask for forgiveness for something I hadn't done wrong. I used part of the inheritance to pay off my debts, quit one of my 2 jobs, and finally allowed myself to grieve properly instead of running from exhaustion to exhaustion. I kept the house on Maple Ridge Road, and some evenings I still sit on that back porch with a cup of coffee, letting the quiet settle around me the way it used to when he was still alive. People sometimes ask me if I feel guilty about the money, about the way it split my family apart. I've thought about that question a lot, turning it over in my mind during long, sleepless nights. And the answer I always come back to is this: I didn't split my family apart. Their own choices did that, long before any letter was ever read. The will didn't create the distance between us. It only revealed a distance that had been growing for years. One missed visit, one careless comment, one small cruelty at a time. My grandfather spent the final years of his life surrounded by people who wanted something from him, and one grandson who simply wanted to be near him. In the end, he saw the difference clearly, even when the rest of us couldn't. And maybe that's the hardest part of this whole story, the part that still keeps me up some nights. It wasn't the money that mattered to him. It was never about the money at all. It was about who showed up when nothing was being offered in return. I think about my family sometimes, about whether they'll ever understand what they lost that wasn't measured in dollars. I think about whether love only becomes visible once it's gone, once the person who gave it is no longer there to receive it back. I think about how easy it is to assume you're entitled to something simply because of the family you were born into, and how painful it must be to discover, in front of everyone you know, that entitlement was never guaranteed at all. So I'll leave you with this question, because I still don't have a clean answer for it myself. If you had been in my family's position, watching an inheritance you believed was yours slip away to someone you'd spent years looking down on, would you have been able to admit the truth about your own failures? Or would you have done exactly what they did and blamed the person who showed up instead of facing the person you saw in the mirror?